Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. I know I'm up in here looking a bit like a peachy pumpkin for you, but welcome back to Wicked Wednesday. So for the month of December we are kicking off a very spooky Christmas. So if you are into all things spooky and all different types of content, fitness, home goods, makeup, whatever the heck, or if you're just into spooky stuff, you can just subscribe to this particular playlist. But I would love to have you guys as part of the family and subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so I know what kind of content to be putting out for you guys throughout the week. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This is actually a story that I found on Reddit. I actually have a couple for you guys. I'm trying to also find some creepy holiday mysteries and some different holiday traditions that are not normal to Western culture that I find really interesting. So I am doing all that research, but I'm also finding these fun stories for you guys. Now this one was actually submitted by Balls to the Norwal. This one I picked it because it's called The Elf on the Shelf. And I don't know about you guys, but when these elves really came out and started becoming part of people's Christmas traditions, I got a little creeped out. I think dolls are creepy, I think elves are creepy, and I think that this story is gonna be creepy because it involves an elf and it involves that creepy little elf on the shelf thing that are flocking to the stores, and that like just the whole concept is kind of a little freaky. Like the elf does things at night and the kids are supposed to go find the elf. Like it's a little creepy in my opinion, but you know, I'm just the Grinch over here. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So, November 30th. I am a self-proclaimed Christmas freak. I love Christmas. What isn't to love? Beautiful twinkling Christmas lights adorning every house, people being nicer to each other, that jolly old fat man with his tiny little helpers, flying reindeer, and my favorite songs. I jump into my minivan, having just dropped the kids off at daycare, and head off to find a thrift shop. I have a full-time job I love, but it doesn't pay that well, so I've started up a little side hustle selling secondhand clothing online. I'm about to pull into a new thrift shop I haven't tried yet, and one of my favorite Christmas songs comes on the radio, Christmas Wrapping by the Waitresses. It's hard to pick one favorite Christmas song since I just love them all so much. I turn up the radio and sing along, bah humbug, but that's too strong because it's my favorite holiday. Then there's a lot of me mumble singing. It's kind of like when I was singing to the Beastie Boys. It's so fast, I don't know all the lyrics, so I just shout the one word I know from each lyric and then pick back up strong on the chorus. Merry Christmas, but I think I'll miss this one this year. As the song ends, I get out of my van, head held high, knowing I just nailed the musical number, and venture into the thrift shop. Ugly Christmas sweaters are hot this season, so that's what I have my sights set on today. After diligently hunting through about 3 clothing racks, I find my diamond in the rough. A nice throwover with some cute snowmen juggling snowballs. It's $150 and I should be able to sell it for $30 online. Ugly Christmas sweater parties are my bread and butter right now. Having found what I was looking for, I, of course, have to go down the Christmas aisle that is set up for this time of year. I find a cute ornament of a Dalmatian wearing a firefighter uniform that my son Chris would love. He's really into Marshall from the kids show Paw Patrol, but sadly the firefighter hat is flaking quite a bit. That is probably why it's only 99 cents. I move on, seeing nativity sets with wise men missing their heads, Christmas village houses without lights, Christmas cookie trays, and then I see him. He's about 1 foot tall, wearing all red with a pointy white collar and white gloves. It's the classic elf on the shelf. As a Christmas nut with kids ages 4 and 6, you know I already have one. I got Buddy when my daughter Juniper was a year old, even though she didn't know what elf on the shelf was. I was so excited to start a new Christmas tradition. I never had the elf on a shelf when I was a kid, not sure why. Maybe my parents were those people who find elf on the shelf to be a bit too creepy and Big Brother-ish. The idea of a small elf keeping an eye on you and reporting back to Santa isn't something everyone likes. I made Buddy less creepy by making him tiny clothes that look exactly like Buddy's from the Elf movie. The kids love him and enjoy seeing what antics he gets into each night. This elf sitting on the thrift shelf was slightly different than his elf on the shelf brothers and sisters. He had the classic red felt outfit and brown hair, but one of his eyes was the normal blue and the other left eye was red. It looked as if whomever owned him before didn't follow the strict elf on the shelf rules, which clearly state in the book, "Don't touch me, I will lose my powers." It appeared as though some young kid got a hold of him. Someone took a red Sharpie and scribbled over the eye entirely. Poor guy, I thought to myself, just as I saw the small white sign placed in front of him. It looks as if the owner of the store got creative in an effort to sell this elf. In childlike elf handwriting, the sign said, "Hello, I'm Mr. Jingles. I take care of the toys on the island of Misfit Toys since I'm a misfit too. I would really love it though if I could come and play with you." Well, that was it. How could I possibly say no to that level of adorableness? Even if it did have a creepy red eye, before I saw the sign, I was thinking of using magic eraser to fix the eye. But what a perfect way to show my kids that being different is okay. "I'll take this sweater and Mr. Jingles," I said as I plopped them both on the counter. The checkout guy briefly glanced up at me with bright green eyes and said, "That'll be $4.50. I paid him, took my bag, and was headed on my way home. When I got home, my husband Nick was fast asleep. He was working third shift since it had a better hourly pay and my Christmas habit needed funding. I quietly got Mr. Jingles out of the bag, sat down, and looked him over. Then the planning of how I was going to introduce to the family to Mr. Jingles began. December 1st. "Mommy, Mommy, I heard Chris shouting from the living room. You really won't believe it. You've got to come and see this," cried Juniper. I smiled to myself and rolled out of bed. Zool was jumping up and down and wagging his tail. "Back up, Zool," I said as I tried to make my way to the back door to let him out to go potty. Zool was our Great Dane. He was named after the gatekeeper of Gozer from the movie Ghostbusters. I mean, I'm a Christmas freak, but I do also really like horror. A weird amalgamation, I know, but it somehow works. I surprisingly like to work some of the horror into my elf on the shelf ideas. One year I did a scene from Stranger Things with tiny elf-sized Christmas lights and cut out alphabet letters that I stuck to the wall. With Zool outside, I was able to see the surprise waiting in the living room. The kids were giggling themselves silly, wiggling around, and jumping up and down as they looked up at the ceiling fan. I had gone with a classic for Mr. Jingles' grand introduction. Buddy and Mr. Jingles were sitting in the kids' underwear, which was hanging from the fan. It looked as though the shelves enjoying a silly underwear hot air balloon ride. "Mommy, there's a new elf," Chris shouted. "And they're in our underwear," Juniper giggled. "Oh my," I gasped. "What does that sign say, Juniper?" Chris was too young to know how to read. Juniper grabbed a sign that was hanging down from between the elves, low enough for her to read. It says, "Hello, I'm Mr. Jingles. I come from the island of Misfit Toys because I'm a misfit too. Would you like it if I stayed a while and played around with you?" "Can he stay, Mom?" I nodded. "What's a misfit?" Chris asked. "Misfit," Juniper said. "Yeah, Mom. What is a misfit?" "Well, a misfit is someone who doesn't look or act like the others do. Mr. Jingles has one blue eye and one red eye. But see, Buddy has two blue eyes." The kids' eyes got wide with understanding. "Oh," they said together. The rest of the day was filled with putting out my collection of Christmas Village houses with the kids. December 4th. Nick is so funny sometimes. On December 2nd, I had Mr. Jingles and Buddy in an epic snowball battle. Buddy's army consisted of a half-naked Barbie, one of the Transformers, and Marshall from Paw Patrol. Mr. Jingles' army consisted of one of the Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo, I believe, a McDonald's car bear toy, and Spider-Man. The snowballs were tiny marshmallows. On December 3rd, Buddy and Mr. Jingles made snow angels on the floor on my cookie sheets. As I fell asleep last night and placed Buddy and Jingles in Chris's airplane toy with Barbie flight attendants, when I woke up this morning, they were not as I left them. Nick must have moved them after I went to bed just to make me laugh. Chris and Juniper came into my room to ask for breakfast, and I was confused because they had red paint on their noses. When I got up, I saw Buddy and Mr. Jingles sitting on the kitchen table, each holding paintbrushes with red paint on the tips. "Why are you laughing at me, Mommy?" Chris asked. "You have red on your nose," Juniper laughed at him. "So do you," Chris exclaimed. "I do not," she said as she ran to look in the mirror. "I do," she shouted and laughed, both kids knowing, making silly faces in the mirror. I got the kids ready off to school and now was in full-blown cleanup mode. As I picked the kids' clothing off the floor, I wondered why they couldn't throw them in the dirty clothes hamper unless I nagged them a minimum of 10 times. During this pondering, I carried the clothing into their room and discovered Harry was gone again. Harry is Juniper and Chris's pet hamster, and this was not the first time they had forgotten to properly secure his cage. We lucked out last time and found him after 2 days of searching. He was behind the couch in the living room and had made it all the way downstairs that time. After a full day of searching on my own, and when the kids got home searching some more, we still hadn't found him. The kids got a long lecture that night on pet ownership and responsibility. December 7th. Nick was back to his old tricks again. On the 5th, I left a note in front of Buddy and Mr. Jingles. It said, "Sorry guys, but we were so tired from flying to the North Pole to report to Santa that we can't do anything fun today. I was pretty mad about Harry, so I used the elf big brother to my advantage. The hope was that the fear of Santa would be scared into the kids to never leave the cage open again." On the 6th, Buddy and Mr. Jingles were back to their fun antics and had spilled a can of peas in the kitchen. They were sitting on the peas, and in front of them, spelled out in the peas, it says, "We peed ourselves." Last night, I had set Mr. Jingles up reading a Christmas book while Buddy was writing on the kids' chalkboard. All of the stuffed animals watched like they were in classroom with Buddy and Mr. Jingles as their teachers. Buddy had written the elf rules. 1. Treat every day like Christmas. 2. There's room for everyone on the nice list. 3. The best way to spread Christmas cheer is to sing loud for all to hear. Only when I got up this morning, Nick had swapped them around. Buddy was holding a small white stuffed animal bunny, and Mr. Jingles had written on the chalkboard, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock the door. Now, I'm not a prude when it comes to my elf on the shelf. Like I said earlier, I did a Stranger Things theme with the Christmas lights one year. That, however, was semi-Christmassy, and the kids had no idea it was from a scary Netflix series. Freddy's coming for you and better lock your door are scary phrases. They wouldn't know it was from A Nightmare on Elm Street, but they would still be asking me who Freddy was, why he was coming for them, and why they needed to lock the door. Luckily, they were not up yet, so I was able to put everything back the way it was before they woke up. Nick and I were like two ships passing in the night lately with his third shift job, so I just texted him, WTF, and went on the day, forgetting all about it. December 10th. I think Nick realized I was as upset when I texted him WTF because today he had the elves in a new configuration. On December 8th, I put Mr. Jingles and Buddy in rolled down paper brown lunch bags. They were followed by Olaf and Elsa and Anna, so they looked like they were having a potato sack race. Then on the 9th, I had Buddy and Mr. Jingles wrap the toilet completely in wrapping paper. That one was a big hit with the kids, laughing and having to rip the paper off to go potty. Today I woke up to Mr. Jingles sporting a tiny black bow tie and holding a little rose made out of Twizzlers with a pretzel stem. He was bent on one knee and presenting it to Buddy, who had a brown wig on and brown fur coat, clearly portraying me. His hands were up to his mouth like he was gasping in happiness at the presentation of the rose. Tiny chocolate chips in front of him then said, "I'm sorry." And I text Nick, "Thanks for apologizing. Let's just forget about it. I'm impressed with your rose making skills." I got the kids ready and took them to school. By the time I got back, Nick was sleeping in the bedroom again. I saw him bundled up into a human burrito. He's very sensitive when the fan is on in the morning. He'll ask me to turn it off lest the slight breeze touch his skin. If I'm getting ready in the bathroom, I need to make sure the door is shut because if the slightest ever sliver of light touches his eyeballs, it's like you have a car headlights blaring in his face. Meanwhile, while he's in the living room, he can fall asleep in his recliner, fan on full blast, TV at volume 56 with the kids running and screaming, and all the lights on. I don't get that man, but I love him anyway. I shut the door so he could get his beauty rest undisturbed. December 12th. Today was rough. I had to talk to the kids about death during my favorite time of the year, a time it was supposed to be joy and happiness. I found Harry, or rather, Zool did. I let him outside to go potty this morning and he was sniffing around the back patio in a little snow pile. I laughed at first because he was lifting his head up and down and had snow all over his nose. When I saw he had something in his mouth. "Drop it! Drop it! Drop!" I yelled at him from the doorway, which caused him to bounce, leap with joy, and not at all drop what was in his mouth. I hurried inside and put on my boots to chase him around the yard. "Come here! Come here! I totally don't want whatever it is in your mouth. I just want to pet you and love you," I sang to him. I crouched down, my go-to move to get him to come over. He slowly walked towards me with his head down, wary of my tricks, but still unable to avoid the lure of possibly barreling me over. Then he got too close. "Gotcha," I yelled as I grabbed him by the collar. Give it to me. Drop it," I said as I used my hands to pry his mouth open. I really do need to work on my training him more. "This is cold and embarrassing." Then he popped out of Zool's mouth. I didn't know it was him at first. Harry. Because he wasn't Harry. He had big patches of his fur gone. I dropped him into the snow and screamed because I thought he was a rat. This was no long tale as he fell through, so morbid curiosity got the best of me, and I bent down to take a closer look. Sure enough, it was Harry. He must have gotten out one of those early mornings that I let Zool out to go potty and then froze to death. Some wild animal seemed to have plucked out his hair and chunks of his skin before moving on, deciding it wasn't good enough to eat. It was a gruesome sight. Later that day, I told Chris and Juniper I had found Harry dead behind the stove. I told them that he was up playing in the stars because he had recently watched The Lion King. I figured that was something they could understand since they weren't religious. They cried, of course, and I suggested making gingerbread houses with them. That helped cheer them up a little bit. Alright guys, so I'm actually going to end it here. There is going to be one more part, and that will come to you guys tomorrow. I promise you will have it tomorrow. This video is getting way too long, so I'm going to end it there. It is getting a little bit creepy, and I'll admit it's a little slow forward moving, so I'm really interested on how it's going to end. We are only halfway through, it looks like, on my end. So yeah, go ahead and subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and as soon as the video is up tomorrow, you guys will see it tomorrow. So yeah, I'm gonna go. Bye!